Welcome to Quilting on the Side, the podcast where we uncover the secrets to turning your passion for quilting into a profitable side hustle.
I'm Tori from the Quilt Patch by Tori.
And I'm Andi from True Blue Quilts. And together, we're your co-hosts on this exciting journey of creativity, entrepreneurship, and all things quilting.
We're here to help you navigate the world of quilt pattern design, course creation, digital marketing, and running an online quilt business. We've been through the ups and downs ourselves, so we know what it takes to make money from your favorite hobby.
That's right, Tori. We're going to share our experiences on how we've grown our businesses while balancing family with other paying work responsibilities. It's not always easy, but it's definitely possible. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Quilting on the Side, and we are so thrilled to have Lyric Montgomery-Kinard with us, and she's got a lot of stuff going on. So Lyric, I'm just going to throw it out to you so that you can tell us about all your quilting adventures.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. My name is Lyric. I am a longtime quilter. Started off as traditional as you can be, veered off into left field as soon as I realized that art quilts were a thing. And a few years after that, started teaching because it's in my blood or something, right? I come from a whole family of educators, and we all of my siblings were like, oh, we don't want to be teachers. Like, guess what? We all teach in one way or the other. And I did it because it was a way for me to travel. I've always, like, instead of rock posters and movie stars on the wall in my rooms, I had travel posters of the places I wanted to go. And I saw that this was a way that I could make that happen. And also a way that I could have kind of a balance. Well, my life has never been balanced, but I have 5 kids. So it was a thing that I could control. Career and avocation, it's always been something that has fed my soul and kind of kept me out of therapy and helped me to, like, most teachers are like, oh, traveling for work is so hard. I'm like, oh, it's a total vacation for me. Right? Nobody's eating off my place. Nobody says, Mom, I show up and just play with my friends, right? And I also started very early on teaching online. Before Craftsy, before video was a thing, I taught with quiltuniversity.com back when people had like dial-up modems. So, way back. And so I've been able to reach out to a global community for a long time. And it's one of my favorite things. One of the reasons I teach is because I love people so much. I really love meeting people from different places and hearing their stories and playing with fabric, right? That's what we do. And when that went away for a while, I stopped teaching online because I did not want to sign anybody else's contract where they owned my class and where they kind of dictated the pricing and how much time I had to spend with it. So it was a few years until there were some really great online class platforms that teachers could kind of do it themselves. And I'm a control freak, so I wanted to do it all myself and found it to be, it's a lovely way to run things. Just owning your own intellectual property is a thing, right? I've published a book with a publisher, and it was a fabulous experience. But then they own the rights to your stuff, right? They own the copyright to the book, and it limited some of the other things I really wanted to do. And I made instructional DVDs for the publisher, and it was great and it was fantastic. And I wouldn't change any of that because they launched my career in a way that I could not have on my own. But then when I went out on my own, the next instructional DVDs, I hired my own producer and editor to come in and film and edit and they gave me the master, and I manufactured. I had the DVDs manufactured, and I sold them myself. And even after paying the fee for that, when you get paid royalty on a DVD, it's a small percentage of what they sell it for, not of the retail price, right? So it's pennies. But I sell my own DVD, and it costs maybe $1.50 to have manufactured, and I get, $18.50. Did I do the math right? So it's as long as you're willing to do the work and the marketing, once you already have something of a following, then it's definitely worthwhile. And now, of course, everything's online. So because I owned that property, right, I have the DVDs, which, like, the second set of them that I had made, I had manufactured right before computers stopped including slots. So I have several boxes of unsold DVDs in my studio over here, taking up space, but I owned it, so I could take them and edit them and put them as online classes, easy as pie, right? Because they were there and I could use them for that. And then the story continues. Things expand. When COVID happened, everything shut down, right? And one of the things I also realized that all my friends that I love being around with, I always see at quilt conferences, none of them live here. So the teachers, I adore working with other teachers. I enjoy being at a conference and kicking back with them after a long day of teaching and just talking shop and enjoying each other's company. It's the most generous, collaborative, beautiful community of business people, right? There's not really, I've never run into competition. It's always been beautiful and friendly. And so when COVID shut down, Sue Bleiweiss and I started the Global Quilt Connection, kind of not really on purpose. We held a live Meet the Teacher event. We worked really hard to gather contact information from guild representatives all over the world and did a Meet the Teacher. We just invited some of our teachers, some of our friends who were willing to try out Zoom, right? And we did this event, and it was really successful, and lots of other teachers said, we want to too. And 5 or 6 events later, we thought, okay, this is going to be around and we're putting in a lot of time. We should make it into a real business. So that has evolved over time. So Global Quilt Connection is where we put the teachers in front of the people who hire them, both individual quilters. We list on-demand classes that the teachers offer themselves. We list live online classes that are open for public enrollment. And we don't host Meet the Teacher per se, but we have live stream sampler platter events where the teachers get 15 minutes in a row, a bunch of teachers over a couple days to demonstrate a technique or something. And it's excellent entertainment and educational content for guilds and individual quilters. But really, behind the scenes, our goal is to get those teachers hired. So we do that. And out of that, I realized that my colleagues needed help with the tech, with how to teach on Zoom, with how to work with videos. And I've always loved the tech. It doesn't mean I'm an expert. It means I enjoy it, and I'm willing to learn it. So the Academy for Virtual Teaching started as a business support community for the teachers. We focus on helping them learn how to teach on Zoom, how to use Zoom, how to do second cameras, how to make videos, how to put those videos up on an online class. And we're doing a new thing. We're expanding one little bit right now, working with a shorter crash course that's only about video making instead of all the other stuff around teaching, and opening up that to brand ambassadors, to shops, to anybody who needs, who has these wonderful, fabulous things that we love to make and need to show, but we need to do it better, and video is the way to do it. So that's a lot of rambling along all the things that I do, not all at once and not all of them well. And whenever I'm doing one thing, there's 12 other things rolling around on the floor, breaking china. You know?
But you've done a wonderful job, and I can see the natural progression from your love of teaching and then just adapting to the world as it changes. Like you said, going from online to offering DVDs, which have phased out, to getting streaming set up, and then helping all of us other quilt teachers along the way. And both Tori and I have been a part of the Global Quilt Connection sampler days, and I have been I've taken the master class, so I can certainly speak to the wealth of information that you share, and that has been a wonderful support to my business personally. So thank you for all you have done to support us. I'll let Tori jump in if she has a question before I dive in. I have so many things.
I want to hear what Andi has to say. I have two questions in particular, but they're more towards the things that you teach. So I'm kind of curious what Andi wants to say.
Well, yeah, that was one of the avenues I wanted to go down, because I think that would be helpful, especially for our audience that may be just starting out in their teaching journey or their pattern design journey. How did you find your voice as a quilt artist?
Like I said, I started out learning all the traditional things. I have a fabulous quilt guild here. I'm in Raleigh, and shout out to Capital Quilters, they have an amazingly active guild. I went to as many classes as I could, anytime I could have an excuse for 6 hours away from the baby. I was like, I'm there. And I took lots of classes, but then it's the art quilts that spoke to me. And really, truly, that's where my soul lies. And again, I took as many classes as I could. I learned how to dye and paint and screen print, and just started making art quilts. I've never been prolific, by the way, 5 kids things. But the teaching journey, so now I teach a lot of art and design and composition classes, which is the thinking process, the visual language of art, instead of making a project or making a thing. But then I also teach my techniques. So I teach surface design techniques. Well, they're not my techniques. Anybody can do them, right? Screen printing, block carving, embellishing. Like I love beading on fabric. Some of my new classes are improvisational embroidery stitch kind of class, working with heirloom textiles and turning them into art pieces. And then other things kind of grow out of the kind of quilts one of the kind of quilts I make are portrait quilts, and people kept asking for that. And I ended up putting together a course for that. That's now one of my popular courses, how to make a portrait pattern for applique from a photo. At the same time, all of the courses I teach, what I'm really trying to do is give people a tool for their kit, to teach them the concepts, the understanding of why I'm doing it this way, and here's how it could work for you, but try it and see what way really works for you. That kind of ties into why I like the business side of things. I'm happiest when I know why things work and how they work, sometimes more than I'm interested in the finished product. So those are things I teach, but it started locally. It started with me trying things out on my local quilt bee, these lovely, lovely women who taught me all kinds of things, and were so many different personalities that if I could teach all of them one thing and they could all get it, and they were friends enough that they would tell me where I sucked, right? They would say, I don't get it. I can't do this. And I would know that I had to add in some sort of way for this type of learner to understand the thing. And then I taught at the local art center. in town. And then I taught at the craft center on campus at the local university. So I developed my courses and ability to teach there, as well as specifically for beginning teachers. Find the teachers you really admire and take their classes. And it doesn't matter if you do the thing. I would sit there and I might bring the supplies to do it, but mostly I would learn about how they taught. And sometimes I would learn, don't ever do this thing. And sometimes I would learn, I love the way that this teacher is presenting this, or the way that they've organized their business. And I've also been incredibly lucky to be in certain places at certain times. We did a 2-year temporary assignment in Chicago, and I joined the Professional Art Quilt Alliance there with Carol Breyer-Fallert and Melody Johnson and Laura Wasilewski, these nationally known teachers who I kind of idolized. And it was just a once a month get together, show stuff, and then chat. And I would sit there at lunch with them and they would talk shop and tell all the crazy, weird horror stories about, some of the things that have happened. And they were so generous. I mean, they were like, here's my contract. Use this as a template for what you do, or make sure you do this. And like, the best advice that I give to everybody came straight out of their mouths, which was, if you're a traveling teacher, protect your time. Protect your time, because it's so easy to get overbooked. And I learned this lesson the hard way. I've learned it again this spring. I looked at my calendar and went, I looked at my calendar and went, oh no, what have I done? Because I've got too many trips this spring. So I've blocked off more time next year to make sure I don't do that again. But if you burn out, you've still got contracts for 2 years that you have to fill. If you're a teacher that gets booked enough, I book 2 and 3 years out sometimes, so, don't say yes to every single thing. Even though it's exciting and wonderful and you really want to do it, don't say yes to all the things. Protect your time and really know the long-term goal that you want to reach, and make sure the things that you do say yes are in that direction.
Yeah, I just saw that must be something with the software we're using that caught some reaction and needed to give us all a thumbs up about that. But that was very good information about protecting your time, and having that master calendar and making sure you get, the downtime in between, because you definitely need to refresh after you've been on the road or been teaching for a while, whether you teach from home or.
And if you have kids, look as far ahead as your school district publishes calendars, and mark spring break and mark the days off, because I've learned the hard way. I've made all the mistakes, never be gone the last 3 weeks of school or the first 3 weeks before and after school starts, right? That's a nightmare.
Yeah, that can be hard. So you mentioned you had written a book and there were some pros and cons from that experience. Can you expand a little more on that?
Right. Like I said, I wouldn't change a thing. And this is a protect your time thing too, because I was asked to write the book. And the book was on my list of things that I wanted to do, but I thought it would be 10 years in the future. And I said no for 2 years. I was like, I'm pregnant. I can't think. And the next year was, I have a baby. I can't do anything. And the next year, I thought about it really hard and talked to the family, because it's kind of like birthing a baby to write a book for a publisher. It was, pretty much 9 months of, back then they gave you an advance, which, by the way, is an advance on royalties. It isn't free money up ahead. You have to earn it back. with sales after the book is published. But I bought a laptop and I paid for babysitting. And I would go sit in my car sometimes or in the library because I can do many other things. I can make my art, I can teach, I can do all things with distractions of kids at home, but I can't write. I found out. So it was a lot of work to write, to produce all of the work for it. And then I turned it in and heard nothing for months, for several months. I got it in by the deadline. I worked really hard. And then for 2 or 3 months, it was just radio silence. And then the week before Christmas, they came to me and said, okay, we've got 2 weeks with your copy editor. This is the final look that you'll have at the book. And here's the deadline. And this is over Christmas and New Year's. Thank heavens we weren't traveling. And thank heavens I had the best copy editor. And a lot of times they don't even let the author look at the book at that point. You don't get to make changes. It's the copy editor, I hope that's what they're called, I might be wrong, was just looking for layout and making sure all the fonts were consistent and all that stuff. But she let me do a few things, and we were across the country. We did it all via, I feel like it was before Zoom. I think we just had a lot of phone calls, and she walked me through a couple of breakdowns, and, and it was good. And that book, when it came out, it's so exciting. And it is really like they've delivered a baby to your arms. Like, look what they made. This is amazing. And they have when you work with a publisher, back then, they have a huge audience. They have magazines that they would put it in. They promoted it all over the place. They also, for a year afterwards, would say, can you write an article to go along with this magazine? Can you, because we're going to go on the other side of your book thing, can you write this blog post? Like, I gave them a year of my time for free. Mm-hmm. And then I said, I can't do this anymore. It's too much. These days, if you write a book with a publisher, they really, really expect the authors to do most of the marketing. Mm-hmm. So be prepared for that. And it wasn't a money-making thing. Mm-hmm. It doesn't, just like kids, it doesn't really make you a lot of money. The way, if I wanted to make a profit on the book, I buy them at distributor pricing and I bring them with me to sell when I teach, mm-hmm. right? And then you deal with things, my behind the scenes story is that right as the book was, and it sold really, really well. And right as the book was ready to go for a reprint, the publisher got bought and they canceled it. Mm-hmm. And they did a lot of things with a lot of authors. And they also, my book was the first one they offered as an ebook. So they didn't reprint it, but they put it up as an ebook. And in the contract, it said that I don't get my rights back until it's out of print. But they counted it as an ebook in print. Even though they weren't promoting it, even though my royalty check every year was like $5 because nobody bought it. And it was a number of years later that I was able to talk to the right person in the company that had been bought one more time, at least in that meantime. And I was able to, I bought the rights back to my book. And I was fortunate enough to also buy all the files. So mm-hmm. I have the layout and the InDesign files and the photography and everything. So at some point I can republish it. I actually do have it up in my shop, so people can buy it as an ebook. But one of these days I want to have time and do a second edition. I have ideas. I want to make it better. I don't have time, but I have ideas.
What was the topic of the book?
It's called Art Plus Quilt, Design Principles and Creativity Exercises, which was a huge fight I had with my publisher. that was the good title they came up with. It's the elements of art. It talks about the elements of line, texture, shape, color, value, and describes what they do. It has exercise with to dig into and do them. And then it talks about the principles like focal point and symmetry and balance and scale and, you know, all of those things that create the compositions. So it's a basic design manual. And I wanted it to be basic design, you know, the visual language. Here's how to, and I didn't want to market only to quilters, but the first title they came with had like 18 words in it. I'm like, that won't fit on a spine, you know? And I was at the point, I remember being in a hotel talking to them. I was teaching somewhere and I said, I'm out if you name it that. I refuse, you know, so. And we learned that because of the plus symbol in the name, that it wouldn't come up in Google searches.
Oh, no.
You know, so. So just so you know, there's a lot of things that authors don't get to choose when they go with a publisher. But it can also really, really get your name out there. And there are some really, really good publishers still left that treat their people well. So I don't knock it. You know, but now that I have a following, I would definitely self-publish.
Yeah. So it sounds like marketing is the eternal struggle, whether you have a book or a quilt pattern or a teaching business or whatever. So what lessons have you learned along the way, and a few quick tips that you can share about marketing?
That it's hard. And that, like, I'm good at getting my name out there, but like I said, I love to know how things work, but not always the finished product. And I love marketing, but am not always I don't have any magic formulas for making conversions. You know, I've got a following. I can get my name out there. Can I get them to pay me for things? Not as often as I need. You know, it's a constant struggle.
Yeah.
So one of the things is, if something is sucking your soul dry, hire somebody else to do it. You know, marketing, like social media, there are ways to make it work. I don't have the bandwidth to do that. So I've had somebody else creating content. I'm not sure it's super successful. So we've brought on a marketing company to do an analysis and consult. So hopefully that will be better. I think one of the things that we have to change our mindset about with marketing is that I was just talking about selling and getting people to pay you, but really it's what I love is creating a connection with my people. And that's authentic and that feels real and that doesn't suck my soul dry. So if I'm trying to market and make something gorgeous and pretty and put it out there and then hope it's good enough people buy, that doesn't work for me. But just telling my story, being real, you know, making a connection with people, I think for me and for many people that works better. It feels like, so teachers and you two have both heard this because you've both been in the masterclass. Authentic marketing and what we do as teachers is we have a gift. We have help for people who have a problem that they need to solve. You know, and we're not the hero of the show. They're on a quest. Our people need to do something. They need to accomplish something. And we're the guide. We can give them the tools so they can succeed, so they can, you know, pull the sword out of the stone or whatever. And, you know, that feels authentic. That's us offering a gift to our people who we love, right? So figuring out how to do that authentically and then asking in return for them to, you know, support you is a thing. I don't have that problem with my own teaching classes, right? But some of the bigger business stuff sometimes is a little more, it's a little different than that. So the academy is harder to market than my own classes. My own classes are easy.
That was my follow-up question, was to ask you, how do you get students into your workshops?
your newsletter is your biggest thing, right? Because those are the people who've chosen you. Social media, they have to be scrolling by at the right. It's really random on social media. It's really hard to get in front of people to start off that way. Some people will say it's easy. I don't know. Again, I don't have the bandwidth to be all over that. But for my own teaching classes, I tell people when I'm teaching in my newsletter, in most of my newsletters, but not all, I'll say, hey, here's a cool thing that's in this on-demand class. Here's a link to it. And I don't put a link directly to that class. I put it to the page with all my classes in it. And for live gigs, if you want to travel, there are a number of different ways. Teaching at large conferences, I'm kind of like, it's good on your resume, but you don't actually get in front of a ton of people that way, 20 people at a time. If you teach at Houston, do something like the Sampler, where there's 200 people coming through the room to see you. And always have your information there. The best things for me has happened talking to people at conferences. And here's the thing, write for magazines. A magazine you get paid a tiny bit for, and it gets out in front of a whole bunch of people, right? And magazines are always looking for content. They are always, especially the art quilt magazines, right? It's a much smaller corner of the great big ocean we swim in, but they're always looking for content. So, submit things, and that's a way to get your work and your name in front of a lot of people, right? Tell your story in those articles. But again, so here's the thing, if you already have content, if you've been writing a blog, if you have social media, use that stuff or look at your analytics. I have a website that I've got like 15 years of content on there. If I go in and look at my analytics and find where people are still landing, find the pages that people like, go back to those and put your ads for your classes in those. Or try to figure out why people are going there. What are they Googling? What are they searching for? What problem is that specific post solving? And then figure out the search engine optimization, the words that people are searching, right? And then go apply that knowledge to other blog posts and content that you already have. And this applies for YouTube videos as well, tutorials, same as blog posts, search engine stuff. It's a thing, an important thing. Again, it goes back to you're solving a problem. Somebody, they find you because they want to know how to figure something out. So the words that you put in your title on your YouTube video and your description and in the blog post need to solve that problem for somebody. And then that's where you put your ads. So I don't do a lot of really intensive marketing for my own on-demand classes. And I've been doing this for long enough, and I take limited travel gigs that I don't actually do any advertising for my travel gigs, but that's built up over a couple decades, right? But I also have a really good landing page for my website that makes it really easy for people who come to me, a guild who wants to hire me. That's another thing. Friends, you have to make it easy for people to hire you. If you want to get hired by guilds, you need to make it really obvious that that's what you want and that's what you're available for. Think of all the information that will need and put it right out there. If they have to ask you in 10 emails about different things because it's not already on your website, that's a barrier. That's 10 things they're not going to do, right? And also in this day and age, send an email to find links for program chairs and say, hey, I'm going to be in your area, or I would love to come to teach. And also sign up for Global Quilt Connection. Little pitch for that company. We work really hard to get our teachers in front of the guild. Our newsletter goes out specifically to guild leadership, the people who hire teachers. And we have a mid-month email that lands in their inbox that spotlights 2 or 3 teachers, so you're not even competing with the other list that we have. So invest in that in yourself if that's how you want to get hired. Find the places where you can get in front of them and make it so easy for them to be able to hire you.
Now, Lyric, when you come up with your copy for your class descriptions and your landing page and things like that, have you just built that writing skill, or have you consulted with anybody? What, because I feel like I'm a good teacher and I can promote myself when I'm talking, but somehow when I go to write, it comes out in 3 sentences and it sounds like, okay, I'm the most boring person on the planet.
It can be really hard. I have an English degree, so I've been a writer, but I also write like I talk. I go on and on. So for me, it's always spill out everything. I call it brain barf. Just spill it all out and then get rid of most of it, narrow it down. I have run it by people. And for me, especially, I'll write out something. It has to answer the questions. The same as your marketing. You have to think to yourself, what problem is this technique helping them get over? And then your description has to make it clear that that's what they'll learn. And I'm not the best. I mean, some of my classes are really hard to describe because they are not typical quilt classes. I don't actually have any projects to show from those classes because they're making bad art, weird little exercises, gluing stuff in a sketchbook, and that won't sell any classes. And I definitely don't tell them that we're going to be sketching during class because that freaks them all out. So I find pretty pictures and then I try my hardest to make it clear what we're going to be doing in the class. Also, when you start out teaching with a new class, put out surveys. Ask your students. Write up your own evaluation form and hand it to people at the end of class and say, this is a relatively new class. Give me 2 things I can improve. You put it in positive language so they don't just complain, but say, what did you like? What did we not spend enough time on? What did you think about the supply list? Ask them the questions and you learn the best stuff from your students, and they really help you and you just continually tweak things. I have classes I've been teaching for, 15 years that I'll go back and go, why is that on the supply list? and I haven't actually looked at it in a year, so every once in a while, usually when somebody says, why is this on the supply list? I'll go back and actually read it and go, oh, I can make this better. So it's just a constant tweaking and get other eyes on it. So Andi, yes, write it up, think about these things ahead of time, and then, show it to people. That's one thing we do in the academy is, I encourage people to put their class descriptions up and get, if you put it in front of somebody who really doesn't know anything about what you do and they can get it, then you're like, oh, okay, this is good. And if they don't get it and they're asking questions, you're like, I have a little work to do here.
Yeah. And I really like the community in the Academy for Virtual Teaching because you do have that sounding board. You do have that, group that you can go to, and they hopefully have a balance between they understand the business principles and the teaching principles you're trying to accomplish, and yet they may not be exactly familiar with your technique. So it can come across to a fresh audience there.
Absolutely. It's having a support system is invaluable. whether it's something like the Academy for Virtual Teaching, I also have, over the last number of years, have been in a couple of groups of colleagues that was just kind of like not mentoring, because we were all at about the same level. We all had published, we all were textile artists, we all were teaching. That's some of the things. Some of us had fabric lines kind of things. And we were just a Facebook group, private conversation. And we would run into each other all the time at conferences. But it was a safe place to ask the questions like, this contract sounds weird to me. Does your contract say this? Or am I crazy thinking this? And we've done projects, we've curated a show that traveled around together and worked on, one of us, Sue Bleiweiss was one of my colleagues in there. She and I just appreciate working with her so much. It was so sad when she retired. But she authored a book that we were all part of that is still in print. It's like one of the longest running in the craft quilt kind of world, that it just amazes me. She does such a good job. But find the people who get you. And sometimes you have to make that group yourself. It was a couple of us, slowly inviting, and the group evolved, people in and out over years. But that was one of the best support systems for business that ever. So I'm trying to kind of replicate that with the Academy and provide that for people who, aren't as pushy as I am, going out and saying, you need to come do this with me. Right.
Yeah. Well, we've had several guests on the podcast that have been in the Academy for Virtual Teaching, and they all have wonderful things to say. It really is a good resource, a great community. So if any of our listeners need that support, especially to build a quilt teacher career, it comes highly recommended.
Mm-hmm. And we're expanding. We are starting, we're close. We're so close. In April, hopefully, May. And we're launching the Global Craft Connection. So we're expanding outside of the quilt world. The Academy, everything we do there is applicable to anybody who makes things and teaches people how to make things.
So I love the way that you keep track of because I was thinking while you were talking about supply lists, about how you keep track of your class materials. Can you share that just a little bit for our brand new teachers of how you kept track of the supplies for your classes?
Oh, so for online teaching?
Yes.
Yes. So virtual teaching is a whole different thing than travel teaching. I love it so much. I love it so much, because I sometimes teach really supply heavy courses, and I would bring a lot of the supplies, and that's 3 days worth of work ahead of time for me to order and pack and everything. But when people have access to their own studios, and when I'm teaching online, I have my camera holding equipment set up all the time. Doesn't really take up much room in my studio at all. So I turn on my lights, stick my tablet in over the tabletop holder, plug in the computer cable, and then I have a rolling, I think it's a bakery cart with cafeteria trays that goes in it, right? And each of those trays is one section of a class. So I just pull it up to the computer, and I did learn that I have to, I have a paper on top of each tray that lists all the things that are supposed to be on that tray. And I have to check it before class. If I'm good, I check it before class. But I just pull out a tray at a time and have everything right there for teaching. Sometimes you have to create another step out or something to go on. But how step outs in a class progress. You have the magic oven where you put the ingredients in the cake pan and put it in the oven and immediately pull out the finished lovely product. You do that when you're teaching process, right? You have step outs because the student doesn't want to sit there and watch you go through the whole making process, just the good bits. But those step outs kind of progress down the tray as you go. So that's a super easy way to keep everything organized and put together. And and you don't have to have the rolling cart. For a long time I just had all the trays stacked, and I had bungee cords that I'd like put a piece of fabric on the top so the one stuff on top wouldn't fall out, and put bungee cords and just stack the trays on a shelf. So I love Zoom teaching. I love it. It takes me 30 minutes to set up. I set up my backdrop the day before. I check all my equipment and cables and update all my programs. And if I'm good, make sure my operating system doesn't update in the middle of a class. So that kind of checklist, which, by the way, is one of the things we provide in the masterclass, checklists for check this off before you start a Zoom class. I've made all the mistakes. I've done everything the hard way, so I can tell you what not to do when you're teaching.
That's great. Well, you have shared so much with us, Lyric. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We could go on for hours. We say this with every guest. I think it's just, the crafty people love to talk about crafty stuff. But in the interest of time, we're going to jump ahead to our rapid fire questions. And the one we start off with is, instead of asking your favorite, what color do you struggle to include in your work?
Mauve. It's like, but really my favorite color is all of them. Mm-hmm. One of the things I teach is color theory and relationships of colors. So sometimes you need mauve to make another color really work. But if I have a large area of mauve in my field of vision, I actually feel nauseous. I can't stand that color. It's like a physiological reaction. But, again, sometimes that's what that color relationship needs in order to work. So I can't rule it out entirely.
Now, when you say mauve, are you thinking more of a pinky shade or a purpley? Because to me, it's somewhere in there.
Pinkish.
The 90s puke. Dusty rose.
Puke, basically. Yes. Yes, the dusty. You can edit that out. Dusty rose. Yes, the grade pink.
Mm-hmm. Oh. Tori's dying over there.
Okay, our second one is, do you prefer yardage or pre-cuts?
Neither. I dye most of my own fabric, and when I do fusible applique, I actually have tons of cafeteria trays sorted by color of all my leftover little snippets of fabric that has fusible web on the back of it for when I do small projects. But so I don't really buy fabric, and I don't do pre-cuts because I'm not a traditional quilter. Mm-hmm. If I was, I would probably do pre-cuts because I like things easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like the way they look. I love petting them, and I love looking at them whenever I see them. Jelly rolls are so pretty.
Yeah. I'm so interested to hear your answer as an art quilter and someone who loves to embellish, but what is your favorite notion to work with or tool that is most helpful?
Honestly, my phone. It's a design tool. I use the camera on my phone to look at value scales. When I'm designing on the wall, doing improvisational work, I'll take a picture of every iteration and just move stuff around and then look at all the thumbnail pictures together. So that, and other than, again, not traditional, my sketchbook is the other one. Sketchbook in my phone. And I sketch on my phone too. So, not much help to all of your traditional quilters.
No, I love that. I love that answer because I think that so many quilters and even quilters in business, they're afraid of their devices or they're hesitant to really use it to its full capacity. So just hearing that your favorite notion is your phone, I think will hopefully encourage others to kind of pick up their phone and use it more to its full capacity.
It's a phenomenal tool for so many things, and we always say, oh, people these days waste all their time on their phones. I adore this mini computer that brings the world to my fingers and that makes so many things in my life so much easier.
Oh, it's my turn. Our next question is, what is the most rewarding part of your business?
People. Oh my gosh. When I teach and I see that light bulb go off, whether it's a student who has been told all their life they're not creative and they're in one of my art retreats and they get it, and that smile and that just joy that comes, or when I'm in the academy and I watch one of the people who've gone through the master class, do the thing, they're teaching, or they get hired for a conference, or they put on a summit or something. I get giddy with joy. I spend so much time teaching, I don't have as much time to make. And that wouldn't work if it didn't just fill my soul to watch and help the other business people that I work with and the quilters I work with just find that joy. Because what we do is joyful for us to create and make beauty and do these amazing things. Quilting makes the world a better place. It really does.
Yes, I would agree. So in that spirit, how many quilts or art projects are in the room with you right now?
You have to ask that. Oh my gosh. Do you want
you can
finished
round
works?
off.
Yeah. So I've got all my finished quilts in storage, and I can't even, like I said, I'm not prolific. So there's probably a lifetime worth of maybe 30 or 40 in my closet. I've got a ton of framed work piled up. That stuff takes up so much room. And that's like 100 or so. And works in progress,
that's
my friend, that is a separate, probably hundreds of all different sizes and things, because I love the ideas. I love having ideas, and the follow through is not always a good thing. But I also work really small with a lot of things. I love small handwork things and improvisational embroidery. So, a stack of that looks like maybe 150 postcard things from making bad art exercises that turned out okay enough to go ahead and finish are over in that corner. And then, that's too many to count for unfinished projects.
Our last one is, who is inspiring you right now?
Who is inspiring me right now? There are so many people. Oh my goodness, there are so many people.
And they don't necessarily have to be in the quilting universe. They could be.
This is hard.
Yeah.
This is hard because I also am thinking of faces and can't remember names.
I do that too.
We will tell our audience that you're probably on overload because we are recording this at the end of QuiltCon, and that is inspiration everywhere you turn.
Oh my goodness. QuiltCon Raleigh broke all kinds of records. There were thousands and thousands and thousands of people there. So one person I admire, just off the top of my head, one of my students, Kimberly Pierce Cartwright, when she first came in, really hadn't taught, hadn't done much, but she had a huge dream. She wanted to put on an African American quilters conference, like a whole conference. And she did, and it was successful. I'm so lucky that she's kind of local. So I got to go and help out a little bit. And, I volunteered to be a grunt for a morning, just help set up the teachers with whatever they needed just so I could see it. And it was so beautiful to behold. It was not your typical quilt conference. There was a spirit of joy and connection there that I was just so proud of her. and that kind of thing inspires me, to see somebody go big, like go really big. Like she got one of the directors of the Smithsonian African American Quilt Museum to be her keynote speaker on her very first thing that she put together. Tell me that isn't dreaming big. And she just went for it. So that inspires me. That was lovely.
Yeah, that's a great story. I'm glad that you have wonderful successes to celebrate. So good job to Kimberly. Tell people where they can find you, Lyric.
You can find my own classes at lyrickinard.com. The Academy, if you want to learn how to teach anything in the virtual world, you can find us at Academy for Virtual Teaching, or the4vt.com for short. If you are a quilt guild or a quilter and are looking for teachers to hire, or if you want to get listed and get in front of those people who hire you, go to globalquiltconnection.com.
As we have said, yes, you are doing, you must be an octopus in a different life with all these different areas. And as you said, the balls that are juggling. So
I'm really tired and overwhelmed a lot of the time, and I do it to myself. I have no excuses.
But you are doing wonderful things, and I'm so glad we have connected and that you have been able to be our guest. It's been a joy to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me. And all you people, dream big, do the big things. You can do it. I know you can.
Always so inspiring to talk to other quilt business owners, and Lyric sure had a fantastic story to tell about her journey. What was your biggest takeaway from that, Tori?
Oh my gosh, my mind was reeling while she was talking. And I found myself like, oh, we have to ask her questions, because I just wanted to let her talk. She just, oh my gosh, she's a wealth of information and joy. Mm-hmm. And if you haven't seen our YouTube channel, I would definitely go and check out like Lyric and watch her as animated as she is. It was so much fun to speak with her and just watch her body language change with every question, how she lit up when she talked about who was inspiring her. Well, anyway, my key takeaway, or my main one, was probably about the publishing. That's really when my ideas started going, and I'm working on a book currently. So her speaking on the ins and outs of publishing really kind of gave us a really good insight into what it's like to work with a publisher. And it might be a little bit different, as she said, now than it was when she published. But it does kind of strengthen my resolve to self-publish. Rather than go with a publisher, because that was a question I was kind of juggling. And then I did choose self-publishing, but it still feels like, is this the right way? But the more I hear about it and the way Lyric spoke about it, I really think that is the way to go. So yeah, that's probably my key takeaway, is the ins and outs of publishing, because I think that is something that so many business owners, so many teachers, like she spoke about, are looking for an opportunity to write and publish a book. So that was probably my biggest takeaway. Andi, what was yours?
I had a few just little snippets that stand out. It was really encouraging to hear that even with her success and the place she's in with her business, that marketing is hard for everyone. So for those of us that still, kind of struggle in that, that's a pretty common theme. So it gives me hope that we can all, still make our way in that. I really loved her suggestions for keeping class supplies organized, and just kind of her structure around how she has step outs and things for her classes. And the one core thing I think that ran through Lyric's story was her love of community, and the way she was able to build that. And now that is kind of branched out among her own teaching and her own quilt style. Her art classes are wonderful. And then she has the community of teachers and promoting them with the Global Quilt Connection and giving people the tools they need to be successful as online teachers through her academy as well. So she has so much to offer. We'll have to definitely put her on our list as a return guest so she can teach us more tricks and wonderful things.
Definitely. And like you mentioned, we're both in the academy, and it's a wonderful community. It really is. I love what she's building over there.
Yeah, I think that we have much more good stuff to come from Lyric. So hopefully everyone checks her website out at lyrickinard.com. And before we wrap up, I want to say a special shout out to C Squared Quilts for supporting the podcast. So please go to our website. You can see the different ways you can support us. And we thank C Squared and all of our listeners. And we hope that you have a wonderful journey in your quilting adventures. What a great discussion. If you enjoyed this episode of Quilting on the Side, please leave us a review on whichever platform you're listening. It can be iTunes, Spotify, or even our YouTube channel.
And hit the subscribe button so you don't miss our next chat. Until then, remember to have fun in your business and do a little quilting on the side.